Hello and welcome to today's Advective weather update. Tropical storm Franklin has recently made landfall in the Southern Dominican Republic. As you can see from the satellite presentation, it isn't particularly well organised at this time. However, that isn't impacting its primary effect on the islands, which is very heavy rainfall. Looking at the forecast first, we can see that it should remain a tropical storm over the next 24 hours while passing the island. It could weaken to a depression or even temporarily dissipate, but if it does so, it should rapidly reform and re-strengthen in the open Atlantic, where it is expected to bring a hurricane in around 3 days at a time. Currently, winds are 50 miles an hour and a pressure of around 1,000 millibars, moving to the north at 10 miles per hour. It's expected to turn to the north-northeast and then pretty much due east while slowing down a lot in 2 to 3 days' time, and then it should accelerate to the north or northwest. As you can see by the size of that cone, however, it could be moving straight towards Cape Hatteras or straight towards Bermuda. While the most likely path is somewhere in between those two locations, it should be noted that impacts are possible in either of those locations, with them being much more likely in Bermuda than the Carolinas. However, strong rough surf and rip currents are likely across the length of the east coast of the United States once this becomes a hurricane. Those effects should take a couple of days to reach the east coast and then continue for several days until Franklin has moved out of the area. In the long term, talking 7 days to maybe 2 weeks from now, Franklin will move up into the high latitudes, and it's uncertain at the moment whether it will stay out to sea or impact the Canadian Maritimes. Now, it's far too far out to say anything for certain, and we can't say where it will go, but it's just something that people up there need to be aware of, that you will have a hurricane moving within 1,000 miles of you, which is a wide margin of error, but at this time length, up to 2 weeks out, it could easily move 1,000 miles in one direction or another, which is why the forecast only goes out to 5 days. Now, those key messages, as I mentioned, heavy rainfall is the primary impact, and unfortunately life-threatening flash flooding and mudslides are expected. And this is impacting both sides of the national divide. Hispaniola is 2 countries, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, while the heaviest rain is expected in the Dominican Republic. Near where Franklin is making landfall, there could still be significant flash flooding and mudslides in Haiti as well. And of course, tropical storm conditions are affecting the coastal regions, but with the winds being relatively weak and expected to weaken, this is not the primary impact by any stretch of the imagination. And here's a brief look at that rainfall. This is just a 24-hour total rainfall product from the GFS model, and as you can see, over a foot of rainfall is perfectly possible, including what has already fallen, mind you. But a foot of rainfall in 24 hours is going to cause some potentially devastating flash flooding in those parts of the Southern Dominican Republic. And as you can see, 6 inches for parts of southeastern and eastern Haiti. Looking at the Atlantic as a whole, you can see Harold moving inland over northern Mexico and far western Texas. Pretty weak now, barely a tropical system, should degenerate into a post-tropical system or a remnant low in the next few hours. Franklin in the centre of the screen, the most important system at this time, and out towards the east you have 92L, that's the yellow area. Low chance of development in the next 7 days, but something could happen around 7 days, as you'll see in a moment. And that red system is the remnants of Emily, which now has a high chance to regenerate into a tropical storm as it moves northwards and undergoes a jet interaction that should help it with its fast pace of motion and reasonable sea surface temperatures. Now, here is the GFS model, the latest for the next 7 days. As you can see, Tropical Storm Franklin becomes a significant hurricane, maybe Category 2 based off this particular run taking it at face value. There are other models, of course, and the hurricane models, the high-resolution ones, such as the HWRF and the HMON, the older one, and there are some new ones as well, of course. Those take it quite a bit stronger than this. You can see it gets into the 960s, moves near to Bermuda, and then heads off well out to sea. There are some suggestions that if the environment is significantly more favourable than anticipated, Franklin could become a major hurricane or maybe even a Category 4 while it's out to sea, well to the south of Bermuda. But of course, if it gets stronger, it will likely push a bit farther east because it will start moving northward sooner and it will have less time to move back to the west. So even in this run, going out 7 days' time, so a bit farther than the forecast, and it's already unreliable at 5 days. But as you can see, Bermuda getting grazed by tropical storm force winds, and if Franklin's a bit stronger and a bit farther east, those could be higher winds. Not out of the question that Bermuda gets a direct hit from this system in 6 to 7 days from now. So people in Bermuda need to be paying close attention to Franklin. In the centre of the Atlantic, you'll note that Emily regenerates at the start of the loop, moves north, gets to around 998 millibars, and then becomes a post-tropical system, moves into the UK, becomes absorbed by a high latitude system. And at the end of that run, something else you might notice is that 92L looks like it's trying to become a tropical depression 7 days from now, which is why there are still formation chances for this system. Originally, it was expected to form in the deep tropics and maybe move to the west to the south of Franklin, maybe even becoming a significant system. Now, that's not expected anymore, but it still could become a named storm in the middle of the Atlantic and shouldn't have any impacts to land, especially with Franklin to its west generating all that rough surf. Finally, you'll note that there is a hurricane forming in the eastern Pacific from an area of interest that has been marked by the National Hurricane Center, and that could bring significant impacts to portions of coastal Mexico. That's worth watching as well for people in those areas. Thank you very much for watching this update. We hope you're staying safe wherever you are in the world, and we'll be back again soon with another update on the tropics. Goodbye.